Welcome to 10 Talks, real conversations with champions for champions. I'm your host, Emily Love.
And I'm Carlette Patterson, your head sports life coach. And the desired outcome of our real conversations for champions with champions is to share our passion for sports life coaching. We want to get you coached, and our purpose for training you for a life that you love is we want to connect you to what matters to you in your life and the power of being a champion in your own life. A champion life is a 10 life. Welcome to 10 Talks. Have you ever been involved in something that you just loved, and when it ended, you wondered, what am I going to do next? Well, that's transition, and we have somebody today that's really going to take us through the power of his story and adding that competitive greatness component. So today, Nathan Twaddle is joining us. He is from New Zealand, and he was a rower and on the Olympic team twice. He was a medalist in 2008 for the Beijing Olympics. He has a degree in physical education and finance. And on top of being an elite athlete, Nathan has worked as an advisor for high-performance sport in New Zealand. He was on the international commentary team for the 2016 Olympics. He's a marriage celebrant and one of our favorite, he's a master sports life coach in our organization. Nathan, it is fantastic to welcome you to our team. And today it's exciting to be able to talk about what is it like to really transition from being in the Olympics to being in life. Welcome to the Life Gym team. What an honor it is to have our champion guest, Nathan, with us today. He and I met 10 years ago in New Zealand when he was just transitioning from sport into life, and his first day on the job at High Performance, and he got me. I don't know if that's a 10 for people or not. So Nathan, we can talk about that, but it's really fun to be looking back at our film and our story and thinking about how fun it's been that I did get to somewhat go through that transition with you and now continue to stay connected and really watch you start to live a 3D life. So coming from just starting to transition from sport into life, and for 10 years you've been practicing both living for success professionally, significance personally, and philanthropically for service, really introducing those three dimensions, which is something that we're all about in sports life coaching. So Nathan, today we want you to share with our team really the power of your story, and some of the tools that we've worked together on are competitive greatness and really that stepping into a 3D life. What does that mean? Most professional athletes are one-dimensional in terms of they've got to have those blinders on and be really focused about how they're going to become that Olympian, which we can't wait to hear your story from that perspective. And then how you start to open up and really become a husband, a father, work into transitioning from sport to business, and really just the fullness of the life that you've stepped into. So team, excited to introduce you to Nathan. And Nathan, tell us a little bit about your story.
Thanks, Carlette. A pleasure to sort of be on with you and be able to share some of my background. I have to say it was a full-on transition to basically retire from sport, jump into a job where I was going to be helping other athletes with planning their lives and their careers around their sport, and to meet Carlette on my first day, just as I was meeting my team and learning the organisation. There was a lot of information overload, both.
But all information is good information, so that's a good thing.
That's right. Yeah. And a lot of I think I had to. I think I'd finished sport thinking, right, I can settle down into a more comfortable working career, and pretty quickly the analogy which Carlette you've used a lot with me and others over the years was get comfortable being uncomfortable. And holding on to that athlete mindset. So I guess for me, I've always had a love for the sport, even as a young fella. I had a grandfather who was an All Black, and always sort of admired what he had done. He'd sort of been in the team around World War II, and had played last game and then basically gotten on a train and headed off to sign up and go off to war and never played again. But stories of playing certainly inspired me, and I just love the physicality of it, and the being part of a team, getting the chance to succeed, the learning skills, and the feeling of being better at something, and even the sort of the joy of winning and the bittersweet learnings from losses, and the relationships and adventures I got to have off the back of my sport were a big part of what kind of drove me to go for as long as I did and try and reach for the heights I did. I wouldn't say I was necessarily someone everyone would look at as a young man, probably in my early 20s, late teens, and there was no one saying, hey, there's someone who's going to be an Olympic medalist one day. I think they just, I was pretty happy-go-lucky, made plenty of mistakes along the way, and did my university career, and finding socialising probably a bit too enjoyable compared to actually putting in some work. So I learned some pretty good lessons there the hard way. But probably the big one I think was a real turning point for me was I had a coach, Fred Strawn, who was a New Zealand selector in the 70s when New Zealand men's 8 had won an Olympic medal and was still coaching in his 80s. He's still coaching now in his 90s. And he was our coach at my university crew in Dunedin, New Zealand, University of Otago. And he picked 6 people out of our 8 to make the New Zealand university team, which I'd been in the year before. And he didn't pick me. And he was a tough old bugger. He basically said, "You're too fat." It was pretty blunt.
Performance barrier, right?
Yeah, I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. But also, they were my friends, and I wanted to see them do well. So I trundled off to watch them race against Australia, and they were racing a river race, so head to head, and watched them come down the river, pulling away from this quite good Australian crew, black singlets, which New Zealanders always get excited about, and crossing the line, winning. Just saw them enjoying that moment of kind of victory, camaraderie, sort of being together as a team and having put effort into something, and just had this sort of moment of going, you know what, that's where I want to be, and I'm prepared to do what it takes to have the chance to have those moments. And it completely turned around things for me after that. I completely changed how I stopped drinking. I trained every day. I studied better, and very quickly that effort turned into starting to get results. And from there it sort of built up, right from getting good results in university crews to graduating university and making New Zealand teams, and eventually making it all the way to the Olympics.
Twice, right? Didn't you do Olympics twice?
Yeah. I sort of possibly because of that sort of happy-go-lucky, I was a little bit of a late starter, really. It took me more than a few attempts to make it. I think I trialled for the New Zealand team 4 times before I actually made the New Zealand team, and then 2 years later went to the Olympics, the Athens Olympics. An incredibly tough couple of years because I was very much on the fringe, and it was every day was uncertain whether I was going to be in or not. No one thought I was a shoo-in, and it really probably came down to after a month's worth of trialling and boats and racing again and again and again, probably came down to the last day where the selectors just happened to swing something in my favour. So I do like that line, getting lucky is where preparation meets opportunity. And I think for me that was absolutely the case. I'd been preparing for that for a long time. So when the pressure came on, I had the mental toughness, resilience to not crumble under that and to keep pushing.
Nathan, everything you are talking about is our definition of competitive greatness. I mean, oh my goodness, the power of your story, really talking about overcoming adversity. You know, we anchor our definition of competitive greatness in what Coach Wooden says in his pyramid of success, which competitive greatness is being your best when your best was needed. And I just love listening to your story and hearing about, you know, the performance barrier of being cut or not being selected. And really what was your action to change was that you dug deep and you were like, wait a minute, this is so, you know, not what I want. I'm interested in being a champion. And so many times we leave those performance barriers or that film that isn't a 10 out of our story. And Nathan, thank you for sharing the power of your story to really anchor you in helping you figure out really the purpose that you wanted to do the change for. And team, if you're thinking about something and you can relate to Nathan's story in terms of, you know, having a good time, kind of going through life, just happy-go-lucky, which we love that personally, that spirit of joy, and then finding something you're passionate about and really deciding that that's worth going for. And Nathan's been amazing at sharing just for us the adversity, the failure, the challenge. And team, I want you to hear that Nathan worked on this for years and years and years, and it came down to a moment from, you know, being picked for the Olympic team versus not being picked for the team. And he didn't have a shoe in. He didn't know if it was guaranteed. And I think so many times when we think of a vision or we think of a dream, we're willing to do the work if we feel like we have a guarantee that it will pay off. And every champion that I know didn't have a guarantee. And they just knew the only guarantee they had was their commitment and their champion spirit and their champion heart that said, I want this. And no matter what it takes, I'm going to do everything that I can to be able to fulfill the dream that I want or the vision that I have. And certainly we know that there are all kinds of performance barriers, life barriers, things that show up, and we don't always get to win the championship as we envision it. And Nathan, I want to step into that chapter of your story in terms of we got to hear the journey there from a competitive greatness moment that you moment by moment you kept practicing. And then, you know, tell us your story about actually getting there and what happened from that perspective.
Yeah, so I guess so getting there. Well, there are. I don't know if it's ironic, but my last Olympic race, where I won an Olympic medal, was a terrible race. It was not good at all. It was. We did not put in a good performance. We were not as competitive as we had been against other crews that we lost to in terms of winning a bronze and not competing with the two crews that got silver and gold. And it was the oddest feeling to get off the water. 4 years earlier, I'd gotten fourth and had missed out on bronze by less than a second. And I probably felt worse than when I did when I got off and had finished fourth. And people often say, "Oh, fourth must be the worst." But in that case, I was 28. We had no expectation of even getting close to a medal. We'd well outperformed both my own expectations and the country's expectations, and everyone was saying how amazing we'd done. And we also saw that as an opportunity. That was the start of something. Hey, we've had this amazing opportunity, and bummer that we missed it. But if we keep going, think good things could happen, and they did. We won a world championship the next year, and then we were silver the 2 years after that. And we were, had lots of profile in New Zealand, and was getting paid good money to do what I love doing, which was rowing. And in that last year, the pressure came on. We made it all about the outcome. It was all about we want to win gold, and I think ultimately, unfortunately, that took us away from for me, took it away from a formula that had worked really well, and that I started focusing on the outcome and not on enjoy. I don't know if enjoying the process is right, but keeping my focus and attention on the process as much as maybe I should have, and ultimately, it meant that we were standing there thinking we were. Actually, I don't even know if it was we wanted to have a gold medal. It was that we didn't feel like we competed. It didn't feel like, in terms of competitive greatness, that we delivered our best when our best was needed. It wasn't our top performance. So that was a really interesting one to take. When I reflect back, to be standing on an Olympic podium, and I was trying to savor the moment. I could see George, my peers partner, who's a very driven guy, was pretty grumpy. And so at the same time, I'm still trying to stay in this moment and enjoy it. And we had press around who were talking about, how you guys feel that you lost that race. We were going into press conferences, watching our good friends who had won silver and bronze and gold, and had an amazing ding-dong battle down the course, talk about that experience. And so sitting on the sidelines of that, to sort of like just passengers here. And it wasn't until we went out of the grandstand and started walking up through the crowd. My family was there, all our friends who were there, people who I'd had a connection with through my sport for 15, 20, 25 years were there. It took me 2.5 hours to walk a kilometre back to the boat park and gather my things, and to get out of the boat park took another hour, and just that privilege, I guess, of being a medalist became really humbling, because people were really excited, amazed to see a medal, amazed to talk to a medalist, and it was so that started to help sink home that actually, if I look over that 6 minutes, it was not the race I wanted, but I had a career that was 10 years long, and it was such an amazing experience, and it allowed me to go to so many places, have incredible friends and experiences, and to have achieved an amazing outcome. I'd be a fool to define success or failure just on the basis of 6 minutes, where I'd try to give it everything I could, just wasn't good enough on the day, and I had to be okay with that. And in the end, I think it was a good lesson. And often when I speak to people now, I try and emphasize that as being a really important learning for me, and something that's actually made it easier, I think, for me to transition than some other friends I have that have been more successful in their sporting careers.
Nathan, one of the quotes that I found that I absolutely want to blow up and put in my room was from you talking about your experience. And I feel like it sums up what you're talking about perfectly. I mean, you've had the highs and lows, and you've built a career. And I think a lot of times people think they can look at your success and be like, can't be any lows for him, right? This guy is the top of athletes. And yet we heard it in the beginning of the podcast that your story started with you not really liking where you were and getting cut and all that stuff. And wow, to think about how you dug into that competitive greatness. But even you talking about how winning, like you had to kind of come to grips with how you dealt with winning and losing and winning a medal. In this article, you said, winning or losing is a moment in time. You feel the joy or the discomfort, but more important is, what did you learn? If you want a long career in sport, it's about picking a different measure and understanding you can never stop learning. It seems counterintuitive not to focus on winning, but winning is an outcome of consistency, putting together a great performance. And Nathan, I feel like that's exactly what you talked about. I mean, you won a medal, and still you were not happy with right where you were, but having that perspective in terms of spending 3 hours to get back to your boat, I feel like that's exactly what you did, is you lived in that quote of going, hey, winning and losing is not all there is, right? It's not all there is to life. It's not all there is to sport. And it seems like you really have learned to embody that. But does it take did it take you to the the top of your career for you to really let that sink in? Are you learning that lesson now?
Oh, constantly, daily, just in different spheres, I guess. And I think it is about learning, but it's also about kind of letting go a little bit. Like you've got to be comfortable with who you are. I think that's another thing. There's it's a well-known phenomenon of the post-games blues. Like most athletes go to this amazing pinnacle event, and it's emotive. It's just life is very vivid when you're living in an Olympic Village and surrounded by amazing people who are doing incredible things from all over the world, and the world is celebrating. It's not celebrating you, but it's celebrating sport, and you're part of that in this very inner circle. And you fly home, and you still have to go and buy the bread and milk. All of a sudden you're back to normality, and you still have to put your pants on one leg at a time, and it's been a pretty constant learning for me as I've gone through a career. There's that idea of simple, complex, simple. Mine's been a bit of a combination of that plus ego, humble, ego, or hopefully humble, ego, humble. I have had moments where I thought, yep, I'm the bomb. I'm doing pretty good. And then life will throw you a lesson. I'm still getting those now. And as I've gotten older, I guess what I've learned to do is to recognize that the emotion of that oh no, I got off track here. That was my ego leading me down the garden path again, and I've gotten better. I think through the work I've done with G.I.V.E.H.O.P.E and just through a more rounded life experience of understanding when the ego's going there and being able to readjust and getting back onto a life that's filled with just joy of learning and oh wow, wasn't that an interesting failure? Well, let's back to the drawing board. That was fascinating. We'll have to figure out how to do that better next time. It's just it's classic growth mindset, Carol Dweck type thinking, which and believing in the power of practice and routine and just building those great habits that may not have saved me yesterday, but I think and keeping a focus on is going to make me a better guy tomorrow.
Nathan, you are just speaking beautifully into our three-dimensional life. And so thank you for sharing that journey and really just opening up the world of being an Olympian athlete and sharing a glimpse for us to be able to see inside the heart of a champion as you go for the things that matter so much to you, and just the longevity of the amount of time that you're training for, a few moments of a race or a few moments of competition. And so, team, what I want you to hear from Nathan is really stepping into that three-dimensional life and having it be personally for significance, professionally for success, and philanthropically for service. And I want to start with the film of the athlete. You heard Nathan just speak so eloquently about that. If he started to really focus on the outcome, that if his definition was based on an outcome of which he did not have total control, especially on a team sport, then all of a sudden, no matter whatever everybody else's definition of success was, it didn't resonate in his heart at the way that he wanted to or what he felt good about. And so that's important for us. When we talk about success, we want you to come up with your definition of success. That way you can win the day and you can hold yourself accountable to whatever is motivating you, whatever's purpose-driven for you from a success perspective professionally. And then really following how he stepped into significance when he stepped off the podium and into family and friends, and you heard that beautiful, precious honor of and humbleness of being able to represent your country and train for your country, and how it wasn't about Nathan anymore. It totally became about him being for significance, and that significance and service component is really him being able to bridge that playing a small role in something so much bigger than himself. And we talk about that philanthropically and being able to serve and support, and our whole life is really playing a small role in something so much bigger than ourselves. And so that story is beautiful. So Nathan, when we talk about your 3D life and we talk about where you are today, enough about your story. That's been phenomenal. We know it's gotten you to be the great man that you are today. And so catch us up. We know that you're loving from significance, being a father and being a husband, and professionally you've moved into really coaching up industrial athletes, which is fun to hear from that perspective. And we know philanthropically you are giving hope to so many people. So go ahead and share with us, just kind of take us on that from the Olympics to where you are today.
Okay, so Carlette and I met on the first day of my job as an athlete life advisor for High Performance Sport New Zealand, which is the national body that looks after Olympic athletes. And we have a government-funded program which kind of fills the role the same as the USOC in the States. And that job was a real privilege in terms of being able to work with athletes to help them plan their lives. And that required my own. I'd trained in physical education with a focus on sport policy and history, and then had done a postgraduate diploma in finance right around the time of the financial crisis, and so that wasn't really an option. And then what came through, I had a woman, Susan Tomlinson, who Carly had connected with and had organised, and Susan had sort of bought into the program and decided as the leader of that team to bring it into New Zealand, and also approached me because she was looking for someone for the team who had a high level of experience in elite sport that could connect with the athletes that they were working with. And it was the first time, I guess, I'd seen that the principles I had, the values I had, led to an opportunity for a professional career, and that I always tried to be to represent others in terms of trying to support, generally bring connection between our coaches and managers and the athletes, and to get everyone on the same page so that we could all succeed. And it was gratifying, I guess, to hear someone saying, "Hey, we hear you're this type of person, and that's who we're looking for." So I kind of jumped at the opportunity because it was at a time when I was transitioning out. It was just a pretty tough time to be transitioning into. I was still really dealing with the fact that I wasn't an athlete anymore, and I'd been that for basically my entire life. That's who I defined myself as a sports person. So it took a lot of conversations, and I always use the line actually when working with athletes. Look, I'm going to tell you some things. You may not believe them all, and they may not all resonate, but I believe in the power of what I'm saying, and I'm going to do my absolute best to convey it in a way that delivers at its full potential. And I hope you just remember this when you get to that point 7 or 8 times down the track, when you finally click and get that insight. So it was became a little bit about performance versus outcome. I had to sort of separate from be okay with the fact the person in front of me may not be quite getting it, and just do my very best to deliver as best I can to serve the person in front of me. I guess over time it got to the point it was a real privilege to do that for about 7 years, and it was probably back to the example of not quite getting it. It probably took a second go at working with Carlette and doing the Master Coach program, where I finally started to resonate with the tools and the principles behind 3D sports life coaching, and actually doing that is what started leading me out of working in sport, because I did have a broader sense of service now. Who I identified with was broader as I've gotten a bit older. I was lucky to keep rowing till I was 34, so I was already called Pops in the team. So maybe had a little bit of a more mature outlook, and I wanted to work with people in other spheres and to see what life outside of sport was like. And again, I don't know if you'd call it serendipity or just what you put out. The idea of what you put out into the world comes back to you. But I had sort of put that thought out there and spoken to a few people, and an opportunity came up to work for a construction company owned by an ex-Olympian, someone I'd raced against as a young man, Pat Peoples, and he rang me up and said, "Hey, I hear you're looking at moving out of sport, and I'd love to have a conversation about what you're doing and where we're going as a company." And it was someone I think I could see they had a exciting vision of the future. They had a big goal that they wanted to strive for. I liked the principles of what they were doing. They all worked incredibly hard. I liked the effort they put in and how committed they were to their company and to their people. And I got me out of my comfort zone again to try and grab something that was going to be really challenging. It was going to stretch me in terms of being responsible for trying to grow and improve the lives professionally and personally of 200 people whose living and families relied on them being able to deliver at their best. So I'm a year into that journey now, and the learning is coming thick and fast. But what I'm finding is I'm getting up in the morning and I'm wanting to be there. So I'm taking that as a good sign, even though it has been really challenging.
I would love to know, Nathan, as an athlete, I remember thinking that a college athlete, nothing more than that, right? Not pro like you, not Olympic level, but I can remember in college thinking that I was ready for the next season because it was so tough. It was so challenging. I felt like I didn't have a life of my own and the demands were suffocating. And then I got married and I had kids, and it's more suffocating than college athletics was. So how do you talk to us about that? It's a really debilitating lie to tell yourself that in the next season it'll be easier and things will be, sure they'll be different, but it really, if we have that championship mentality, then I love what you're talking about, like really just embracing challenges. It never goes away, right? We're constantly learning. Like you said, well, that was a fun failure, and have lots of those. And so talk to us about what you anchored into, maybe some of your personal favorite tools to get you, through these seasons at a championship level and not let that anxiety and the pressure sort of overwhelm like where you wanted to head transitioning out of sport into your life.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that the big one for me was a moment that really clicked in talking this through with Carlette was the athlete mindset. It took me a long time to go, okay, I used to be an athlete and now I'm something else. So I'm going to try and be a professional business person. What do those professional business people do? Okay, I don't know what they do. I can't figure it out. It didn't really work. And look, I can't. I know in the college sports system, to try and be a student and deliver, it's hard work. There's a lot to learn, and then to try and throw sport on top of that with all the fatigue and the competitions and the pressure, I absolutely get why that. Yeah, I think that's up there with trying to compare with kids. But for me, it was sort of thinking, you know what, actually, who I am hasn't changed. The things that made me a good athlete, I don't have to throw on in the garbage. I can keep those, and they can actually give me, I don't know if I'd call it a competitive advantage, but they're what is going to allow me to be competitively great. It's probably a good way to describe it. And so I started leaning back on those things. So rather than saying, all right, I'm going to work a 13-hour day, I'm going to hammer it all day on caffeine and coffee, I went back to working out what is a good energy and time management look like. I'm good in the morning. I'm used to training early. That's when I've got my most energy. Let's put in a big sprint there, then step out of that, recover from that. It's okay that I'm not trying to deliver 24/7, 365. You need, this is just a season. That was a big one too. Being able to see wherever I was, whether it was with a 9-month-old that wasn't sleeping while I had 2 older kids that were also not sleeping, but at different times while trying to work and stay healthy and renovate a house and head away to the Olympics to commentate for the Rio Games. That, hey, actually saying yes to all those things was possibly not a good thing in hindsight, but it's just a season. It's pretty uncomfortable, so I better get comfortable being uncomfortable and learning from this for next time. Getting to a phase of life where actually what I say no to is almost more important than what I say yes to. So those are lessons that I think I try and stick to now. But the big one for me is probably is still saying no and really believing in the and actually that I'm doing it to honor and respect the person that's making the request of me. And Carlette, you talk about it a lot. If you can't turn up and be a 10, then maybe you shouldn't do it. And that for me is something I try, and if I had any work on it, was still going back to that one, still trying to recognize when I'm taking on something just because I want to say yes to someone to please them, rather than actually honoring myself and my limited capacity to deliver. And actually, I'm not going to put my best foot forward if I don't. Yeah.
So, Nathan, I really want to unpack those transferable skills that you talked about. There's a couple of tools that come to mind as I listen to you share just the power of your truth and really being able to figure out, who am I? I love the fact that you tried to go be a business person and you were like, wait a minute, you know what? I don't even know what those people do. So I really want to encourage all of us to honor who we are, and we don't have to show up and be somebody different. We actually want to train to be our best self. And that starts with a truth component and really being able to step into our truth, claim who we are. And it was so powerful to hear you talk about, Nathan, taking those transferable skills and leaning into them and really using those to step into whatever next that you wanted to do. And I know you've had lots of seasons and will continue to have more and more seasons, but you can take those transferable skills that you learned in sport and you can continue to practice. So you're actually getting great at your skills versus trying to get great at a career. It all comes together, but your focus can be more on what you can control, which is your skills and the ability to practice those. So, team, that's one thing you can practice, is really discovering and focusing on what are your transferable skills from every opportunity that you've been able to really be blessed to be exposed to. And the other tool that I really value and appreciate and want the team to hear loud and clear is that power of team. How you were able to put the word out there, ask for what you wanted, kind of spread the word amongst your friends and family. Hey, I'm considering this, I'm interested in this. We talk about going for what you want, and that's a perfect example. And then you were able to connect with a teammate from a while ago that started a construction company, and you were able to team up with him. And so, team, I want you to hear the power of those relationships, that we don't know where we're going to end up in life, and we don't know how this journey of twists and turns and wins and failures is going to show up or where it's going to take us. But we do know that being a 10 and showing up a 10 and being in relationship really sets us up for a winning season of life. And Nathan, you've been beautiful of expressing that in the power of your story and how that connectivity of, even when you haven't been your best, you've been committed to figuring out how to be better at it. So thank you for taking us through just those two dimensions in such a really big way. We want to step into our third dimension, which is all about service and philanthropically, I know, really introducing the concept of sports philanthropy, how we can be a champion giver, and what we've done to really introduce sports philanthropy to the world and any athlete, and really any life athlete as well, is to say, how can you give hope? How can you really think about giving hope based on the power of your story? So, Nathan, share with us who gave you hope in your life as you watch your film and how you're giving hope now.
Yeah, so who gave me hope? I guess probably was volunteers, coaches, and other masters, athletes, and administrators at the clubs that I was part of. Right from a young age, I was privileged to be coached by Olympic athletes, to see them around my sport, also to, I guess, grow up in a family where it was important to my mum and dad that we went out and we volunteered and we gave our time for good causes and help people out. So I learned the I guess the pride and satisfaction of doing that, and it was amazing to see these people who had basically they built a community and a connection with the sport that I loved, and they gave so much to it. There were people in their 70s and 80s who were still coming down, laying rowing courses, running umpire boats, coaching school kids every morning, season after season, and really inspiring and seeming to be really enjoying what they were doing. And I took a lot of lessons from that, I think, and that actually the reward of service for its own sake being something that, it's sort of a money but can't buy thing. And so that's and again, in terms of working with Khaled and in terms of learning the coaching skills and trying to build that in others, seeing it actually change the lives of the people I work with, to go from, hey, how can I get paid for doing this thing, to actually go, it's okay that when a school rings you and asks you to come speak, it's all right that you can't go and see every school. You've only got so much energy in your season, and hey, you want to turn up and be a 10 for whoever you go and see, right? And so give yourself permission, I guess, to, again, be able to say no, but do it with honouring the person in the group you're talking with, and really delivering for those you can do. And for me, I'm became a marriage celebrant when it's something I never thought I'd do either. When a friend of mine asked me to be the celebrant for their wedding, and that's been incredible. And again, I sort of used to ask people to say, "Hey, can you? Oh, what should we give you for being our celebrant?" And it's mostly friends. And it was, I'd say, "Oh, maybe you can, pay for my accommodation or something." So I wasn't asking for heaps of money for it, but I think what I realised with a little bit of time was actually I don't want anything for this. And actually, if you pay me for this, it's kind of tainting that sense of service for me. So it doesn't matter who asks me now. If I think I can turn up and be a 10 for it, and I say yes to it, then I don't charge. This is something I try and do, is I genuinely keep that as a service to others. And it is an amazing experience to be there for people on that day, that sort of momentous moment in a couple's life. So feel very privileged to be there doing that. I also still give back to athletes myself. I'm not coaching, but I'm coaching these 3 young boys that I'm trying to grow. So I'm starting to coach 6-year-olds rugby here in New Zealand, which is great fun, and getting involved in those school communities, and it's a great way of actually trying to understand what a good values-based approach in sport is, and bringing the parents and kids along with that. So again, I think I've got more out of it than probably the kids and families have. So that service, in some ways, it's best that it's selfless, but ultimately it's kind of selfish, because I get so much out of it when I do stay true to the intention of genuinely serving others.
Nathan, you have just expressed the three-dimensional life in such a 10 way. Thank you so much for the honor today of being able to share you with our team and just be able to learn your winning strategies, hear your story, the performance barriers that you've overcome. And team, you have a lot you can work on this week. So really thinking about the power of your team, thinking about the power of your story, the transferable skills that you've learned, anchoring and figuring out your truth. Who are you? Are you in alignment with being your best self? And really going for that three-dimensional life. Who you want to be personally for significance, who you want to be professionally for success, and who you want to be philanthropically for service. And Nathan, you said it so well. Thank you to all the volunteers, the coaches, the people that are so impactful in our life, that are just giving. They're giving us hope 24/7. And so many times they don't get to hear how much we appreciate it. And so thank you, team, for all of the service that you're doing. And Nathan, thank you for reminding us that it's really a selfless gift that we give when we give hope, and that the more we give, the better we all feel. And it really anchors us in that 10 life. So team, it's up to you now. Go off this week and practice, practice, practice. You've got a lot of great winning strategies from our champion, Nathan, and go out and have a 10 week. Start to anchor in figuring out how to have that 3D life, and practice, 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 nothing but 10s.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget, tune in next week and head over to iTunes and Spotify and hit subscribe.
Remember, a championship life is a 10 life. You matter. Your life matters. Create a life that you love. Give hope to others, and be and choose nothing but 10s. Be you. The world needs you. Go to lifetrainingacademy.com.